Okay, so it's been almost a year. I think the last video I made was June of 2022. And as you can see, I'm a little calmer, I guess. Um, and there's still stuff in the background. Some things don't change. So I've been living without now my former spouse, soon to be legally former, for a year and a half, I would say. But I still have seen him. So um, from time to time, and he does keep his distance because he knows that he's done me wrong and done wrong and won't, as I say, come to the table to discuss any of his choices and behaviors that were on an ongoing basis just an assault to the human experience. And he still hasn't gotten the proper help, which is uh, probably for him mentalization or transference focus therapy. He's did the DBT, but a watered down version with the veterans. It wasn't as T and what goes into that type of treatment and what is required. So a watered down version means it's not like sanctioned by them exactly. They're getting like printout copies from sections of the manual, and it may or may not be with psychologists. There's nobody 24/7 like it's got to be. So that information is very overwhelming to people who've lived an overwhelming life. And even if they are acclimated, somehow uh, it's still an onslaught of information. So that's why it takes 2 years. They don't get it the first time around. They may never get it. So he had no interest. I think he knew early on that he was just effed, that his life was falling apart because it wasn't of his the design of the way he had me in his talons. Um, he knew was falling apart. That the gig was up. The trick was for had gone on too long. He knew he tricked me. He knew I would wake up one day and all and he was living in that realm of taking what he could get until it was up. So I'm going to share some of my thoughts from what I continue to listen to, the wise people or the people that are most skilled in this realm, including narcissistic abuse survivors, people that were diagnosed with borderline narcissist. Well, the ones, there's nobody like that really is. I mean, they call them self-aware narcissists, but whatever. I don't see them making appearances on anybody's shows. All right, not the self-aware narcissist. It's usually like the borderlines that make appearances on people's shows that are now self-aware and working on improving themselves. Because as they say, the borderline, there's more hope for them. So I would say I was living my truth the entire relationship, but I was also living his lie. Okay. That's when it comes down to people not being evenly yoked. I'm a Christian, and I, you know, was very vulnerable when I got back into relationship with my former spouse, which then lasted 25 years, 9 of which we were boyfriend and girlfriend. I was vulnerable because I had just become I guess, a born again, non-practicing born again Christian, which means I didn't have a community or participate in church. I just had read the Bible. Anyway, looking at those videos that you might see, which I do suggest you could see, that I've made prior to this, you can see how the tension I had in my body, what they say is the over explaining, the nervousness, just at the brink of all my nerves, and yet holding on and holding out to the possibility that something could be done to resolve my situation other than leaving the situation, loving someone with borderline personalities, that's for the parent to the child to the parent, not relationship. Okay. Because what you have to give up in a relationship, a romantic relationship, an intimate, is unendurable. It's not supposed to be part of the human experience. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about uh, what I've been assessing as the information comes into me that I pursue in regards to my own healing. I think I may have mentioned, be very wary about people that call themselves experts. I prefer the word specialist, because a specialist is someone who has immersed themselves in the field of mental health and then specializes in one area. It's like, the way I came up with this is to think about a medical doctor. They're a foot specialist. They're not an expert in feet. They don't call them, they call it on their card, it says specialist. What do they specialize in? So, not to throw out, every person that calls themselves an expert, but grain of salt it. All right. You want them to have the certifications, just like you'd want your cardiologist to have their certifications. They've gone through the system. So on to some of the stuff in regards to the terminology. And I might say this flip-flopped, but in my opinion, the codependent and the is the empath. All right. And the empath is not to be confused with the term empathic, because these days you got the codependent and the narcissist, right? They're on opposite ends. And I would say that I was not codependent, even though I was behaving like a codependent. The codependent is the enabler. And I can say that because the difference is I was trauma bonded. There's a difference between a trauma bond and a codependent. Okay. This is my experience, my personal experience. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a specialist. I'm just somebody that's lived a life of absolute hell. And I'm suffering. I'm a cancer survivor. I went through cancer with my former spouse. I now have severe fibroid issues because the body keeps a score. The body is the end zone for what goes down. You don't listen to your mind, your emotions will tell you. If you don't listen to your emotions, the body's the last stop. Okay. So I didn't listen to my mind. I played God. I can do this. I will, my mind's telling me this is wrong, identifying what's wrong, verbalizing what's wrong, relaying what's wrong to my partner. Nothing resolves and nothing changes. So I still go on. Okay, so it's still not working. Then why am I crying every day? Listen to that. Why am I crying every other second or anytime something happens? Well, because there's no resolve. Did I listen to my emotions? Emotions can be anger. It could be those basic emotions, tears, anger, elation, even neurotic, being neurotic about something. Go by the 5-factor model. Okay, the ocean. I was very neurotic. All right. I'm going to lose my train of thought here because I'm thinking about also how I kept wanting him to reach rock bottom, you know, waiting for him to, once he reaches rock bottom, then he'll start out. Well, he won't reach, nobody reaches rock bottom unless, when they have an enabler, me being the enabler. So I wasn't codependent, even though I was an enabler. I was behaving like a codependent. I can say I was trauma bonded, and look up trauma bond, and like I call it a domesticated Stockholm syndrome. But the reason why I say I was not a codependent, but operating like one, I was really trauma bonded, was because once I learned that I was trauma bonded, what it was, all the details, I hit rock bottom. I didn't realize I hit bottom, but I was able to break it. And that took a long time. You could be in rock bottom for a while until you fully digested, regurgitated, you're in your hell, you're in your shit. You're still crying every day. You're still, hoping. But once hope, I think I may have said that hope was broken, then there's expectation. And I forget what it was before that, habit. Yeah. Your body's just accustomed. So I broke it. A codependent will learn what it is and remain. So I broke it. No matter how much I love this person, and I still do, okay, I was able to break it. And that was the other thing I learned that looking back, I think I came across this about a month ago. I said, you know what? I hit rock bottom. I was the one that hit rock bottom. That was a big thing for me to realize. So the codependent is the empath, and being empathic is not the same thing as the empath, because the empath is on the one side and the narcissist is on the other, or the borderline, the cluster B. Okay, the cluster B is on the other. People are afraid to say they're borderline, or realize that the person that they're dealing with is borderline. They want to call it CPTSD. No, borderline is borderline. CPTSD is the other thing. CPTSD is, in my opinion, from what I'm gathering, is different than the borderline. Okay, it looks similar, but it's different. Because in a family upbringing, somebody can develop CPTSD, which is more of the empath, which is more of the codependent. They could have the same, very similar. They would have the reactionary abuse. All right. But the idea of you could tell you're not I came across something, you're not a narcissist if you've always been honest. Okay. That's how you could tell. So if you've always been honest, even though you could be living a lie, you've always been forthcoming. If you're the one that's working on it, call it like it is. Borderline is borderline. CPTSD is CPTSD. There's not, let's replace borderline with CPTSD. Okay, because borderline, it affects every aspect of life. And I believe my former spouse has shared traits within the narcissism and the antisocial, the sociopath. All right, because they have the anger, they have the rage, they have the contempt for intimacy. It's hell on earth. It's like living with the wolf in sheep's clothing. Sometimes they're a sheep and you think they're the sheep. Excuse me, but no. That underneath that one, that what they call that mask, it's just the mask. The mirroring is a reflection of you, what you want. You're going to try to get it out of that person and see that, and they will do that for you, but it's not genuine. It doesn't last. It's not sustainable. They won't be there 100%. They will, if you're cute, they'll be cute. They're mimicking. That's what it means by mirroring. They're mimicking, which means it's not genuine, it's not heartfelt, it's not coming from the inside of them genuinely and sustainably. They're going off their momentary feeling, living moment by moment. And you know how you know this is because their level of anger and rage dictates that that was not sustainable. They're living, they might be feeling it in that moment and you think it's genuine, but then why do they get enraged? That's the answer. They're mimicking you. So because it's been a while, I've been having these thoughts in my head for a while. Could look like, oh, okay. Maybe the last thing, I'll keep this shorter, is a lot of the people that I see on Instagram and I follow and on YouTube, mostly on Instagram, they're like these young, pseudo attractive because they kind of like wear a lot of makeup and they posture a bit for the camera with their faces as if they're very glamorous, and they claim to be victims of narcissistic abuse, and they probably are. They sometimes seem themselves on the surface like they're narcissists because they appear so into themselves and, you know, posturing with their glamour. Could be men or women, you know, and they know a lot. Again, they seem like narcissists, but they're probably not. And I look at these people and I think, you know, like people have commented to me like that I'm the narcissist. Well, I'm in the category of having been exposed to narcissism for so long that my reactions are with the narcissistic abuse, which is very close. You know, I believe the enabler, codependent, empath, and the narcissist have to get the same treatment because they have similar family upbringings, but one developed into the narcissist, one developed into the codependent, which means, again, if you've always been honest, you're not the narcissist. But if you're lying by omission, manipulating, that's narcissism. Sweet talking, I mean, the sweet talking is shared, I would say, is a shared trait. That's not even a trait of narcissism, but you do see it in the narcissist until they get what they want. But I wouldn't sweet talk. I'd work really hard to try to get my former spouse to do things, and I'd be really nice and sweet talky-ish. That's, my mother is a narcissist. Extremely rageful and abusive. You know, I don't think I was ever no, I was never physically. I was physically abused. I was never physically abusive to my former spouse. And as a child, I did experience bullying, but I also bullied people. Okay, so and then, you know, as I grew older, I realized this is, you know, I can't do this. I would say by the time I was like 12 or 13, I stopped the bullying. Maybe 13. Yeah, by the time I got to high school, I was no longer bullying, but I continued to be bullied. So I had given that up. So I would say I am a victim. I have a CPTSD. I definitely have lived through a cognitive dissonance. I could say that about myself. And just to, you know, grain of salt, these people that seem like they're narcissists on YouTube that were actually narcissistic abuse sufferers, you'll hear it, even though in their ability to describe. That's another thing. If someone's able to describe and explain themselves, it's a really important mark of the inner ability to assess oneself, which a narcissist is not able to do. They don't even want to talk about it. They want to avoid it. They want to avoid talking about it themselves, which goes into like no account, not wanting to take ownership, accountability. They could use the word transparent. I'm being transparent right now, but yeah, only in that moment when they call it. But it's got to be all the time. Um, yeah, I would say that I was raised without love. The more I'm distanced myself from my own awful relational dynamic I was in, I could say that even as a child I was raised without love. Because you see, as I progress, the concept of love is becoming more and more clear, and it's more that I realize that I should be protective and maintain my resentment towards my family of origin, my mother and father, and even my siblings to a certain extent who protect their relationship with my mother who remains. So I could say more that I was raised without love. That and to me, love is a system of values and integrity. And when two people get into a relationship, you have to have similar values and integrity. And if not, there's going to be problems because we're not all created equal. Because the creation process lasts until, like I like to say, the coming out time. The coming out, it's like a thing in this country anyway, a coming out party. I never had one, but the idea is like when you're about 16, you kind of like are presented to the world. Well, because your parents have done enough work on you to then make you presentable to the world to then carry on the species, right? Well, I came out a freaking mess. I looked like I was presentable. I was a mess. I knew I wasn't ready. I knew I had a lot of, but the body is a certain age and looks a certain way. So people think you are 16, you have these attributes and these skills and this knowledge, but I wasn't ready. And that's the creation process is about childhood too. It's not just birth and what you're born with. Okay, because people can have a lower IQ but be raised with love. People could have a lower financial status but be raised with love. People could have a high status, be raised with love. Those are the people that are doing really great. You raised with love, you got everything. So I went into a relationship not knowing exactly how to decipher what love was other than what I was giving, which was, like I said, what did I say? I was operating in my truth, but I was also living his lie. So I knew the truth and what love was as far as what to give as a giver, but it got really, really distorted. I still have the capacity to give love, and now I know what not to accept and endure, because I would always reject what I would verbally say, I reject this. This is not right. But I would endure. I would remain and endure. So that wasn't love. To remain and endure is not the loving of the self, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm able to give love, and I'm getting better at it. It's perfecting as I honor myself. So I hope these concepts, I think I went over the difference between all those things. I still watch Borderliner Notes. I still watch Dr. Ramani. I still watch Dr. R.C. Blake's. And then there are some of the other ones that straggle in there that, if you're watching those, other ones will come up in your feed, like certain religious ones, some, women of impact. I watch her from time to time. I'm not 100% on those smaller ones. They're not specialists in the field. I watched enough Dr. Grande. He's like into the criminal thing a lot. Uh, um, the Little Shaman is still excellent as always. And then there's the Instagram people, the holistic psychologist, and a bunch of other people in there. Nate Postewith, I think he's on Instagram. Excellent. So it's a well-rounded, in borderline knows they feature those traditional psychotherapy doctors, which is good. But the other thing I wanted to say, sometimes you'll come across usually the traditional therapist. This is a good one too. And if they have a person on that has suffered narcissistic abuse or had borderline and or has borderline, either one, and what they'll respond to them after this person's telling them what transpired for them in their childhood or in their adulthood with whoever, the therapist will say, "That's interesting," or "That's fascinating." They'll use the words interesting and fascinating to either describe the perpetrator of this person's misery or how that person decided to respond to it. And I just think a lot of the times, the words interesting and fascinating are almost not condescending, what's the word with a P? Patronative, maybe I don't know. Anyway, the word to be used should be heartbreaking, okay? Because these sicknesses, mental sicknesses, are of an emotional realm, and the emotion is in the heart. So it's heartbreaking that these things happen, like this abuse, verbal, physical, psychological. I call it psychological warfare. People say, "Oh, it's not emotional, it's psychological." Well, because the mind informs the emotion. The mind is supposed to always inform the emotions, and the emotions is the second place. But they say with the borderline, they're operating on their emotions. Excuse me, but the mind. There's also like the guy, The Last Symptom. He's pretty good. I don't watch him all the time or listen to him all the time, but the word should be heartbreaking. So if any therapists or experts or specialists or come across my little tiny insight channel here, use the word heartbreaking, because whoever's suffering, it would help the sufferer. Okay. Because basically their heart is broken. If I don't die of a broken heart, it might just be that, because with a heartbreak, you have the physical. Heartbreak manifests itself physically. Okay. Either with the physical ailments and sickness, or for the borderline narcissist, the rage and the inability to adapt to the world. The other one that I always think is great is Eleanor Greenberg. Her Quora information is excellent, and I read that book, Search for the Real Self. Again, I read Games People Play. Excellent books. Search for the Real Self is Masterson. I think he is mentalization based, probably. I don't know what the therapy is called that he does, but Eleanor Greenberg practices that therapy with her patients. So it's been a half an hour. So I'm doing okay. I'm learning peace. I know what peace is now, and I will fiercely protect it. I'm able to decipher who's more easily. Like I'm like becoming superhuman at this point, I feel, even though I'm still like way beyond. I just say that, but it's not true. But as far as like recognizing what I need to recognize of people, in people right away, it's getting better. Like like I can see, okay, the way this person is talking, just observing, just a quick observation. Certain people are not charismatic or fun or exciting. They actually have problems, and I could pick up on that a little better, a lot better. So I'm protecting myself and more cautious, how I used to be, But this wolf in sheep's clothing of a former spouse I had broke me down. Kind of like, it's okay and the anything goes, and just open up the world to everyone. Everybody is valuable, don't turn away anybody. He would be on the street, commiserating with homeless people, or trying to get, that was what narcissistic supply, because anyone open that gives him validation is a source of supply, makes him feel good. He doesn't realize, and I would be like, I don't talk to just anybody or everyone, even, what the extremes, you got the wealthy and you got the homeless, the impoverished. Not everybody's open. My home, it can't be open to everybody. That's how someone slowly gets broken down, is if, their partner is okay with this type of interactions with people. And they're like, well, I guess maybe I'm wrong. You started questioning yourself, and then seeing, oh, everything is okay. But no, everything's not okay when the doors close and this person, my former spouse, decides to just go MIA and not have a discussion over what just happened, as far as letting so and so into our living space, and this person's disrespectful, just like no conversation over it. Just, hey, this person's never coming here ever again. End the story. No discussion. But why not discuss it? Why not discuss it? Because there could be another person that comes in with the same thing. And because it's a different person, what, a new set of standards? You got to go through this again? That's the idea. It's like the idea is to not have the same situations repeat, even if it's with a different person, but of a similar ilk. That's what would happen between him and I. And sorry, the level of disrespect wearing me down. But just like the contents of the DBT, it's not even, he didn't even look at it as disrespectful. How do you teach somebody what respect is? How do you teach somebody what values are, what standards are? A lot of it, that me remaining in the relationship for as long as I did was my fault. I was a target, a victim, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. I use both. I was both. And how much of it was my fault? Well, I mobilized to get myself out, and it's not easy. So if you have any questions about that, about what it takes to get out, I would say I was pretty lucky, considering, because I was able to get out. As far as him controlling me on my way out, he didn't do anything. I was able to file divorce papers easily with him. He came, showed up. People don't have it like that. But people usually have a lot more money to lose, or that's at stake. I don't have much. I don't have money. He doesn't have money. So no lawyers, but it's the emotional difficulty that's difficult to get out. So I think I may have covered that in other videos and how I did mushrooms and it felt like withdrawal and like a heroin withdrawal, which they say it is, and it is. It's just like that. You're suffering emotionally, because I may have said it feels, when you love and you love to love, it feels good to love. No matter what level of values or integrity you have, if you got to stop loving on whatever, you could have a grand capacity for love, or you could have a very meager capacity, whatever it is. You got to stop loving a person that you've been giving your love to. It's very painful. It's like, I call it the opposite pain, because it feels good to love. And I actually think I'm feeling older, because I think even if it's, what is it they say, the dopamine and the cortisol, the chase, and these terrible relationships, you're chasing one or the other. One is still at a high, the one that makes you youthful. So it's like I feel like I'm actually aging. Well, because I'm also depressed and sad a lot of time, but I go out in nature to make myself feel connected with what vibrance truly is. And I always get a lot of good energy looking at closely at plants and flowers. You gotta go really up close, and you can feel good about it by taking a picture of it. And that's how you learn what true vibrance is. Okay, so it does rejuvenate. um but then, I come home, this is still my same space, and it is on a level oppressive. Even though I'm free and have freedom and I'm learning peace, I'm protecting that peace, knowing what peace is. And even though I'm alone, I'm okay. And I do feel alone, but when the more you enhance your love capacity and you have nobody to give it to, the more alone it can be. Because aloneness, I think, has to do with romantic, intimate feelings, because um that's like the ultimate uh, way to demonstrate love, is through romantic love. So when you can't share all the facets of love, yes, it feels alone, you know. But which is different than lonely. Okay, I may have gone through this too. Once wrote a poem. Solitude brings you thoughts only aloneness can please. And if you want to buy my book, Chalkboard with a Bad Eraser Poetry, it's $10. You could look it up, find it. It's on Amazon, whatever. Like I said, I have very little money. And as I get older, the prospects of money get slimmer and slimmer, but I still continue to work on myself and be creative. But it would be nice to, like and subscribe to my channel. And by the way, his YouTube channel got hacked, and I think God is helping him along as far as having done that to him. Time to erase your life. Stop clinging to this sand of a castle, of a house that he wants to build and maintain. And I feel bad for him, and I try to help him along. There's some sort of message every day from him, and vice versa, Instagram, Facebook, or text. But it's very online. It's like hardly never talking on the phone, and rarely in person, because that's how it is. It's got to be like that distance, because there's still a contempt for intimacy, and to show up in that way. So if I have more thoughts as time progresses, and as these doctors come out with new angles and versions of things, just, stand by that DSM-5. Don't get pulled down to think that work isn't worthy, or that it's got to be muddied up by these other classifications. No, they're all out there for a reason, and they're all there to glean from, in my opinion. All right, thanks for watching, and I hope something in this has helped. you to recalibrate and get yourself back.